Welcome to the Feeder Series podcast, your guide to everything from the junior single-seater world. I'm your host, Jim Kimberley, and this week, as F1 recovers from its Canadian trip, F2 and F3 drivers are getting ready for a hectic summer of racing, and we are lucky enough to have one of those drivers joining us today, and they are getting ready for that summer with a sensational result at F2's last round where they stormed to a Monaco victory. I'm thrilled to say we have AIX Racing and McLaren Formula E reserve driver Taylor Barnard joining us, and we also have the return of our Euro Formula Open, Euro Cup 3 and Spanish F4 editor Juan to get us up to speed and prepared for a busy few months of European action. One final thing, if you enjoy watching or listening to the podcast, please drop us a like even, follow us on your podcast player of choice, subscribe on YouTube, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Rush through that because I want to speak to Taylor. I know we've got only so much time with you. We're speaking just before the Canadian weekend. This is going to go out after the Canadian weekend, so we don't know anything that's happened there yet, but we do know that you are the proud owner of a Monaco Winners' Trophy, which you've raced in Monaco a few times now. It's been great. Firstly, how are you? And how's that Monaco win sunk in yet?
Honestly, I'm great. The start of the season was tough. Again, same like last year. But, to get my first points, podium, and win of the season all in one race at Monaco as well was just, it was absolutely amazing.
Have you? Well, it's not just the first points of the season. If we look at it in some ways, you've been like a busy guy with unexpected Monaco trips and everything. What a place to make your debut! How has this year gone for you? It's not been to plan, but in a good way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of last year, I mean, it's been the same for my whole career. Firstly, that every time I get to the end of the year, I don't know if I'm actually driving again the next year, and then it gets to like January, and I thought that I was going to be doing F3 with AIX now, but I got to 1 week before the Bahrain test, and I ended up doing F2. So that was, that was like the last minute calls. I thought, okay, I'll take on the challenge. It's always nice to make the next step, because we knew it was going to be a tough season anyway in F3. So to make the step up, it would have been a really steep learning curve, which it has been so far for me. And the Formula E stuff as well, to make my debut in Monaco there. To race there in Berlin as well, to get the results that I've got it's definitely ramped up a little bit.
Just a little bit, mate. I'm really buzzing for you. I'm going to talk about the Formula E stuff a little bit as well, because it's kind of like, how could we not? There's records and whatnot that you've got there, which is pretty damn exciting. But I will talk also about Monaco. We'll talk about a whole bunch of things. We've got a lot of questions from the audience as well. But I also need to speak to Juan Arroyo joining us again. Welcome back. And you're here, Juan, on the cusp. Bad timing in a way, but good for me because we've got Euro Cup 3 and Spanish F4 going to Portimao this weekend, which when people are listening to this, it's just happened. So congratulations to everybody who won. But for me, that's just around the corner. That's a half an hour drive. And I feel I've got the perfect opportunity to ask what the situation is with the championships, how things are going, and just this kind of Formula regional level of things as well, because Euro Formula was at Portimao not long ago, and there seems to be a bit of a changing landscape in that situation. What can you tell us, and how are you?
Well, I'm good. First of all, thank you for having me again. There's a lot of stuff going on in Formula Regional right now. I mean, with the release of the new car now going for 2026, there's a lot of discussion about what teams are going to do in the next 2 years. In Euro Cup 3, I spoke to organizers not long ago, and they've said at least 2 teams that are in F2 and F3 are now interested. I directly contacted PHM this week, and they've said that they're definitely looking into it. The other team, for now, they can't be revealed, but they are a pretty big, strong team, and the fact that there's that much interest in Euro Cup 3 reveals, there's a lot of drivers still heading into the Formula Regional market, and it's very competitive. So they don't look to compete with Frega. That's what the organizers say. But still, they're getting their grid really big. They're going to limit it to 30 cars even, and they see that demand coming by 2026. There's another team that pulled out recently, Monlau. They had contract troubles at the start of the year. They've since sold their car, but they're still interested in 2026. And so now this year with 26 cars around these first two rounds, it's looking in pretty healthy state. You see MP Motorsport absolutely dominating that championship. Portugal is interesting mostly for that reason. It'll be the first time perhaps Campos really gets to challenge, since it'll be the first circuit that they're on par with MP Motorsport in terms of testing data. So that might really get to be where they hit back. And in terms of Spanish F4, it's almost pretty much the same. I mean, MP Motorsport dominated Jarama, and absolutely it's their chance to get back in terms of Campos.
Well, we'll go into the Spanish F4. I do have some questions around that, and again, me trying to get prepped for it in a little while. But yeah, it is a changing landscape, and I know there's some other news which isn't public at this point, which is making things change. But Taylor, I mean, even from your perspective, you could have made that jump. You could have skipped that regional level. You're like, Formula 4. From what you sound like, it was last minute as well, or you weren't expected to do this? You've had a bit of a career, almost last minute decisions. How do you view your past? Because I do want to speak about that a lot. You've had quite the success from what it sounds like. Unexpectedly, last minute, and then I'll be an F3 race winner in a team that aren't usually winning races.
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing F4, I was doing Italian and German Championship. But before that, I was racing in BWR. I don't think they're a team anymore. We did 3 races, and I did only half the season, and we had no money to do any testing or something. So I finished all of them races last, by the way. So that was a really, really tough start to my car career. And then over the winter, it was PHM at the time messaged me and said, like, do I want to go to UAE to do a test? And we were like, yeah, I'd love to, but, we can't afford to do that because we don't have the money. So we went, they paid for it, and we went to do it for free. I ended up doing that championship in the Middle East, which then turned into the German and Italian championship, which at the end of that year then turned into F3, which all of them things which ended up happening were very last minute, with not much preparation. But I think that's kind of been the same thing for my whole career, that it's always been last minute. But I think in the kind of position that I'm in, I kind of have to expect that I can't have the same preparation in terms of, GP3 testing or GP2 testing. I've not had any opportunity to do any of that my whole career. So I kind of just have to take it the way it is. And I think I made the best of it.
You say a little bit. Do you think that maybe helps with the Formula E, that you kind of had that last minute thing? You're just like, wow, it's last minute Taylor Barnard. I'm used to this sort of thing. I'll jump in, no problem. Points. Getting the young. So when I was looking, it's you, the youngest starter and youngest points finisher. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. So do you think that did help you to get that Formula E start unexpected again, do so well, because that's just what you've had to do?
Yeah, definitely. I found myself jumping between many different cars and just having to be quick straight away because I've not had the time to do the testing and build up to the pace. I have to just be... I've either been thrown into a race weekend and I just have to be quick straight away. And being in that kind of position as a reserve driver, I think I was definitely... The way my career is shaped out, it definitely prepared me for that kind of situation.
How did that drive come about? Because it sounded like the PHM initially years ago, now exit, that's come about with a bit of they must have seen something in you. Is it the same with McLaren, or were you knocking on the door, or did they come to you and say, hey, this looks like something I think you'd be good for?
I think it was a bit of a mutual agreement between PHM at the time and McLaren. Like they were talking about the reserve driver role and doing potentially some testing, which I did in Valencia, the rookie test. Then after that rookie test, I did more simulator, and then I ended up becoming the reserve driver. So I think it was a bit of a mutual agreement, and I think we decided in terms of like myself and my team that it would be a great step in my career to learn off guys like that and to do the testing in that kind of car with that competition of the championship. So I think, yeah, it was a bit of a mutual agreement, and from our team, it made complete sense to do that as the next step in my career to be learning off guys like Jake and Sam and the whole team. They have so much experience, and the professionalism is another level. It was definitely a good choice.
I always wonder which sort of stories, and I'm glad they've kind of done the Brawn GP documentary now, like, because there are some underdog stories which just seem too unbelievable to be true, and then you're telling me your background about you had 3 races, you finished last all the time, and now all of a sudden you're McLaren, one of the biggest storied teams in motorsports globally, not just in the Formula One. So it's just brilliant, Taylor. I'm really happy to see that turn out. I will come back, and again, lots of audience questions to go to. Juan, though, you mentioned Monlau briefly a second ago, and that's pending this new chassis, which is a future inclusion. What can you tell us about that? Because we've seen in F2, as Taylor knows full well, how much a new chassis can shake everything up. Is it something they're just looking at, hey, if there's a new chassis, this is the best time to join for our drivers? Or what's the situation with this this Monlau exit?
Yeah, at this stage, both for Monlau and any other team that's interested in joining, investing that money into multiple Formula Regional cars is not going to be worth it if at the end in 2 years they're not going to be able to use them in any official championship. So what they're doing is registering their interest now, and hopefully in 2026 they'll actually be joining and commit to the championship. It was delayed to 2026 recently. The chassis was originally scheduled for 2025, but according to the president of the single-seater commission, Emanuele Pirro, it was delayed 2 years for due to COVID, the homologation. So now they're looking at 2026, and yeah, that's when the chassis will be there, and that's when the teams will hopefully be there.
Do you think it's the sort of thing that will actually grow the championship, the new chassis? Like, what sort of differences do you know, if there are any, that that we're going to see with the championship?
I don't know that it will have a big impact on numbers necessarily. I do know visually the car is scheduled to look a little bit like it does now. The Euro Cup 3 car is the closest to the current Formula 1 and Formula 2 regulations. You know, it has the curved rear wing. It has the front wing that also goes slightly curved. That's, I think, and according to Tatas themselves, the closest version we'll get to the future Gen 2 car. And I think in terms of aerodynamics, it may have some new interest. Certainly, I think teams have been pushing a lot more positive feedback on this car since it's lighter, there's better handling. They've changed the push-to-pass system specifically for this championship. So in terms of interest, it may have a slight impact, but not too much, and especially now that Formula Regional European Championship is going to have it as well. It's
weird because it sounds like the impact is actually happening now, with Monlau deciding actually now that's not a good time, which I totally understand. So it's kind of watch this space situation for the moment. I'll go back to you, Taylor. I really wanted to talk to you last year because from my side, and it's not to be disrespectful to Genza or anything like that, but you were a surprise package, and you were the timing tower when we watch the races on the left-hand side. Genza's logo, not always there depending on the race in the past, but all of a sudden yourself, and Nikita as well, but yourself, you were there regularly. You were a regular point scoring driver, culminated in a win, and for me, the surprise package of 2023. How do you reflect on that year? And I know we're a bit late to talk about it, but I feel like this is the first time I've had you on the podcast, and I'd be remiss and be annoyed if I couldn't ask, because I would have loved to have spoken to you.
Yeah, like I said, it's always been a little bit of a last-minute thing. The preparation for the season was perhaps not the best compared to everyone else, so first 3 or 4 rounds or so were not the best. We got off to a bit of a slow start, but after the in-season test in Barcelona and Imola, we definitely made some big steps forward. And then I think Barcelona, I was on P2 in qualifying. Struggled quite a lot in the races there, but anyway, the pace was significantly better than the previous races, so we already saw that there was some good potential there. We then had a bit of a run of bad luck in the next 3 rounds or so after that in Hungary and Silverstone, but Nikita had the podium, so again it just proved that we did have the potential to actually, get on the podium and get some really big points paying positions. And then we turned up to Spa and Monza, which were the last 2 rounds, I think, of the season. Obviously, Spa, the sprint race finished second, which was, I think, on merit. It was slicks in the rain. I started close to the front, so that was that was the kind of race that it was, and it was a really good result to get my first podium. I did not expect to win the day after. Starting from P10, we made a bit of a gamble to go on wet tyres. I think I did try to persuade my engineer a little bit to go on to wets because, I said to my engineer actually on the radio that we'd had a great day the day before. We had some great points. We have nothing to lose. Let's just go for it. And it was not really like a massive gamble because the track was actually really, really wet. So in the end, yeah, it paid off. We got the win. And Monza was a great weekend as well. We had a really good pace in qualifying, but there was a red flag which messed up us a little bit. But still, I managed to get a P4 and a P3, which was then ended up, I think I had the most points from everyone in the last 2 rounds. So honestly, after a difficult start to the season, to finish on the last 2 rounds like that with a win and 2 podiums, it was amazing. It was really good.
It's unbelievable in some regards. So I'm looking at those last 4 races, 2 rounds, and it's a P1, P2, P3, and a P4, like a clean sweep of the top 4 positions, which is insane. But you're talking about like you don't know what the plans were going forwards for each season, and that sort of finish. You're doing Formula 2 now, and obviously you're a winning driver in Formula 2 as well. But I was speaking to Sven Smeets, the Williams Racing Sporting director, who was saying that the conversations about what happens next season from the team's perspective, the F1 team academy's perspective, is happening around Silverstone. So in some regards, you performed well early in the season, but then the superb performances came late. Do you think, had it been flipped over or something, the conversations about what might be happening for 2024 would have happened earlier, or potentially an F1 academy position or anything like that? Like, is there anything you can think of that would have changed what's coming into this year with a bit of preparation? I know it's difficult to say.
Perhaps. I think definitely it helps if you perform really, really strongly in the first 5 or 6 rounds. Definitely it does help your situation for the next season. But I've never been in the kind of position to have the good preparation for the season to then be strong at the beginning. So I think also it depends on the kind of team that you're with. If you gel with them really good very quickly, it also helps to be very strong at the start of the season, which I think with Genta was a little bit of a struggle, that we didn't get the click at the beginning, which maybe perhaps hurt our performance a little bit at the start. So, it's always going to be tough to answer that question. If we will actually have an academy drive or something for the next season, it's tough to say.
You have gone back to AIX now, and does it feel a little bit more like a homecoming or some sort of comfort going back? We've seen what's happened with other drivers before, like Felipe Drugovich, for example, who goes back to a team and then all of a sudden things just click into place.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of the main people in the team or within AIX are still the same, which I've known all of the guys for many, many years. So it definitely does feel like coming home for a little bit. I hope we can continue the trend of winning like we did, because to win with that kind of team around me and with them kind of people, it does feel absolutely amazing. So, yeah, it feels like I'm home now.
That's a lovely sentiment. Going to go to the audience questions after this, but you did mention as well, Juan, Spanish F4, and I'm going to be heading there. And it always seems to be, when I was looking through the entry list, like it's what I saw in Jerez with Formula Winter Series, like it's a continuation, which isn't too surprising. But drivers' teams, similarities, what sort of things? Well, again, we're talking before the weekend, and this is released after. But what sort of things will I be reflecting on come next week when the podcast is released?
I think the main thing on my mind, especially with the article that came out yesterday on our site, is what Roden may do. Because Roden Motorsport started this year incredibly with Thomas Straven and Peter Busanellos. They were in the middle of the top 10, fighting for points consistently last year. But this year, they've started, absolutely on form. They started with a victory, a pole position. And, with the resources they have and as large a team as they are, I really think that at some point in the future, they will make up a big 3. So this weekend is important in terms of how much can they keep that up, the consistency, see if really this is their year. And I think at Campos, you also have to look at them, as I said before. They're really strong, and I don't think the first weekends of any of the seasons, or Euro Cup 3 or Spanish F4, were strong. And lastly, I think your eye has to be on Lucas Flucha. He started the season incredibly. 2 wins, especially on his F4 debut. He wasn't doing the Formula Winter Series. So to start like that, I mean, I'm really impressed. MP Motorsport has a great lineup, and that's also what you have to go into looking for.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the names, and a lot of our things or names I was recognizing, and like Griffin Peoples, obviously, Renee Lammers. I know Leah Block is doing a cameo appearance this weekend as well. But is it as simple as the team names in particular, MP, Campos? You mentioned Rodin there, that you expect those guys to be the ones that are always going to dominate a championship like this?
Well, depends year on year. We saw Saint-Lock absolutely destroy the second half of the season with Théophile Nail, but that was sort of unexpected. We still haven't seen any, dark horse this year. There may be some, Drivix always comes in with some fast drivers. Cram even may get some good results. Saint-Lock doesn't look much slower than last year. So there can be some surprises, and no doubt there will be. Especially look out for Juan Cota from Drivix if you're looking for any dark horses. But for now, it seems to be the big 3 dominating.
Well, at least see where we are. I find what I find, should I say, more interesting is these championships now, like GB3 is doing in a way as well, just like Spanish F4, but also because the first race Spain, then off to Portugal, then to France, and it's like having like you say, almost with the regional landscape shifting with the chassis. It's these championships really want to expand from a national almost to a national plus bordered sort of places as well. Do you think these national F4 championships are going to become a bit more regional as well?
They may, but there are regulations in place so that most of the calendar stays in Spain, and thus it's more cost effective. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Euro Cup 3, they've always stated that even though they're based in Spain, they do want to expand, become mainly European. Euro Formula Open, for example, I think they're based in Spain, but they only race in Spain once at Barcelona. All these regional championships want to go away from their home country. GB3 is also expanding more and more into Europe, and I think it's mostly due to how many European tracks are more on the main European land. And they're mostly going to transition into that rather than stay into their home country as they look to, expand their grab on the Formula regional landscape.
Yeah, well, I know Taylor knows a little bit about national F4 championships, which aren't just staying in the nation. With so your successes, Taylor. But I would go and talk about all those successes you were having with a certain pesky Italian pipping you to the title. But got a load of questions that I need to go through, because the Feeder Series podcast is for you, viewers and listeners. I'm going to move on to the hashtag AskFS part of the podcast. Fortunately, I think this week I've got a few questions which I'm going to be able to group together to give the shout outs to people who have. Thank you for asking questions, those of you who have. But there's this one. Let's go into this one. We've got Le Vultures on Tupperall. I've got Checo and Deseris 22, all wanting to talk about that Monaco weekend. How did it feel winning the Monaco sprint? Did you expect to win going into the season? Was it surreal to cruise away from the field in the F2 sprint race? Was there a point when you thought, why is everyone so slow? So those are 3 questions that boiled down from 3 different people, but all about, did you expect to win? How did the race win on the Saturday go from your perspective in the cockpit? Could you let us know?
Well, going into the weekend, I was a little bit more confident than what I was for Imola. The car was definitely strong in Imola. You saw Josh got the podium, so we definitely made a good step forward, similar to last year after the test. We had a good step in car performance, so it was the same again this year. Going into the weekend, I had a bit more confidence. Free practice was wet, so that kind of, ruined the rhythm a little bit for everybody. But it was great fun, honestly. To throw the car between the walls when it was wet on Monaco was actually so much fun. The car felt good, though, which was the most important thing to take out of that. Qualifying was not the best. It could have been a little bit better, but still, we got reverse grid pole. Then that night was a bit tough because I knew that the next day the most important part of the race was the first 200 meters. I went a little bit safe on the start. Bortoletto had a very good one alongside me, but I did a one which was good enough to keep my position. You know, if you try to do the next step and potentially go for like the rocket start, you then make a mistake and potentially lose everything. So I went on the conservative side. I had to brake quite late, but it was enough. It was enough. No, but the car felt absolutely great that race. I was managing in front, many safety car restarts and safety cars that I had to do, which didn't make my life easy. And the red flag at the end of the race, I was like, oh my god, come on, just can we just finish the race? I was comfortable where I was. Yeah, but then after the red flag, I had quite a lot of tyres left. The car felt great, and I said, okay, we've got 5 left to push now. So, you know, I just pushed. I was in the proper flow state. Car felt great. I felt really confident with the track and everything. So it was honestly 5 laps of just pushing the car around the circuit, and you know, actually, you don't get to enjoy this kind of situation that much, because even in testing, there's always pressure to try to discover new things with the car. In free practice on the race weekend, there's 3 laps or so before you have no tyres left. So there's not really many opportunities to actually get the car around the circuit and push and just really enjoy it. And I was in a complete flow state. The car felt absolutely amazing. So them 5 laps were by far the best of the season, and to then finish off them 5 laps with a race win, it was absolutely amazing.
Anybody who's listening rather than watching, Taylor has a beaming smile, I think I'll describe it as right now, reflecting on this. And anybody who says the best 5 laps of the season are the ones around Monaco just before you win, I'm not too surprised. It's what a result it was. I've got a bunch, and again, probably more, well, it is more. I've got Hupov, Kelly, Tia, Cesar Valero, Fia, Charlie, Ported Celery, Motorsport Fan, and Alex Sagner 1993, all asking essentially the differences between the car in F2 and with the Formula E car in Monaco, in particular in Monaco. Is something that's easier to drive? Did that experience help you? What are the things to do adapting to the car? Just it's all around the car. If you the 2 cars, should I say? If you can let us know.
Well, firstly, they are very, very different. F2 is about 10 seconds per lap quicker, so that's already a massive chunk difference. Obviously, Formula E has the groove tyres. The procedures and the way that Formula E works compared to F2 is quite different as well. In terms of quali procedures, when you do push-call-push, it's similar in that sense. The car is very software driven, whereas F2 is obviously downforce and mechanical grip. So the way that you approach the car in terms of driving, I guess, is the same, but the way that you operate it and the way that you extract the most out of the car is a little bit different. For sure, driving...
What do you mean when you say software driven? What sort of thing is the software, and how does it dictate how the car works, if I can ask?
So, like, for example, in Formula 1 or Formula 2, even Formula 3, there's like the majority of the setup work of the car is done by the springs, tire pressures, you know, like the actual setup performance of the car. For sure you have that in Formula E, but the way that the systems work in the car, so you have ALS, which is kind of like ABS, like anti-locking system, but it's not as strong as ABS. You have also traction control, but it's not as strong. Small things like that, they definitely change the way that you drive the car, but they don't have such a big influence. And the way that the teams extract the most performance out of the car is through them kind of systems. Obviously, if you have the best traction control or the best anti-locking system, for sure you have a performance advantage, whereas Formula 2 you don't have any of those systems. So the way that the teams approach it and the way that you then try to extract these systems as much as you can as a driver, for sure is very, very different. I obviously got a little bit of experience driving the track the couple of weeks before in Formula E. However, it was not as good as I expected. Like, I couldn't take as much as I wanted because the car is very different. The race is completely different. There was like 100 and something overtakes, and in the sprint, I didn't overtake anyone. So you know, there is definitely a big difference between the two. But both are just as enjoyable as each other.
It's such a sensational result for you, and you did well in Monaco F3 race as well the year before. So it just seems to be one of those tracks. Same to Gabriele Mini as well. It just seems to be one of those tracks that some drivers do seem to click with. There are some other questions just briefly on these ones about the F2, F3 thing. Like this question from Fia as part of those ones actually intrigued me because they wanted to know, does F2 now feel less chaotic after doing the FE races?
Yeah, definitely. I tried to overtake Zayn Maloney in turn 6 in the hairpin, and if I had not have done Formula E, I definitely would not have gone for that overtake. The way that these guys invent overtakes by slightly nudging each other out of the way, doing very unorthodox overtakes, and having very slight contact, definitely opened my eyes a little bit to what I could maybe extract a little bit more out of F2. And I think if I didn't have that experience, I definitely would not have gone for some of the more risky overtakes that I did. But again, that's kind of why we went down that road, because it's a great experience for my career, and you can see, well, thankfully I had the opportunity to race, so I kind of got that extra little bit of experience as well. But you can see the way that the guys race in Formula E. Definitely, you can take some things. In my position, I can take some things from that and apply it to my current career.
I have always enjoyed drivers who do cross-discipline racing, so it's such a good experience for you to have at such a young age. I'll say about the record stuff at such a young age as well. A really important question though from Motorsport Fan, and then we'll probably start moving a little bit further away from Monaco. But how was the Grand Prix gala in Monaco? They want to know.
I was tired, to be honest. No, I mean, but it was a long day, for sure. Sunday was not as good as Saturday. I just missed out on points, was a little bit unfortunate. No, but the gala was quite interesting. We turned up and there was a massive hotel and a huge water fountain outside, and when you walk in and you see Charles and all of these, like Fred Vasseur as well, you see all of these guys, and like this weekend I'll be sitting at home watching them, like watching the Grand Prix, watching Charles drive. To see them shake his hand and to actually have the opportunity to speak to him a little bit was amazing. It was really, really good fun.
Did he give you any tips? Did you have to ask him any questions? Did you get much of a chance to speak to Charles? I have to ask, like from a Charles Leclerc fan as well. I need to ask these questions.
Unfortunately not, but if I get the opportunity, I'll try to get more tips out of him for sure.
What an experience, though. I love that you were tired because, I mean, you have to get up a ridiculously early time in the support series for Monaco. I know F3 has it even worse, don't they?
Yeah, F3 doesn't have the best schedule in that kind of situation. No, but I can imagine Mini as well. He for sure had a long day because he woke up early. He had a race win, so I can imagine he was quite busy as well. He sat across the table from me, actually. He didn't look very awake.
My heart bleeds for you getting to go to the Monaco Grand Prix Gala. How dreadful a life it is for you, Teddy. Christ. Formula E, and again, we're going to move away from these ones, but I had a couple of questions. This one's Cesar Valero 98. No, sorry, this one from Moo Moo Tony. Did you make friends with any drivers during your FE stint? And if so, who? But also Charlotte Taylor 1994. Did Sam Bird give you any advice when you filled in for him when he was injured? If he did, what was it? And can you use that advice in F2? They're just these kind of these questions around the paddock, the similarities. There's so many drivers in there in Formula E who have that F3, F2, F1 in some instances background. Is there anything they can do to help you? And have you had quite a nice experience chatting to these drivers who are in very different stage of their career?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when I filled in for Sam, he did give me some tips because he's obviously very experienced in Formula E. So when I was filling in for him, he tried to help me as much as possible. In terms of taking anything over to F2, I spoke to Sam and Jake quite a lot to try to get as much out of them as I could. For sure, they both have a lot of experience in the junior formula. series, I try to get as much from them as I can, from experience from other teams and how does the series work. For sure, it's just general chit chat, but I try to get some things, not all things I could obviously apply. I would say I speak to some guys on the grid, especially after the Monaco race. A couple of the guys said well done to me, and then I started talking to them. So I try to make as much friends as I can in that aspect, because you never know how the future will plan out. So to have as many friends and connections to other teams and drivers generally, just to have friends is definitely nice.
I get the impression, Taylor, and I mean, Juan, you've spoken to a lot of drivers as well. Maybe you'll back me up on this, that you just have some drivers who want to be friendly. And I mean, Juan, it's like when you speak to a driver and there's not much coming out of them in terms of an answer. Taylor isn't that guy, is he?
Of course not. I mean, you've been a very well-spoken guest. I've enjoyed hearing it, every single bit of it. Who'd you make friends with specifically in the F2 paddock this year?
Oh, the F2 paddock's a bit different, honestly. Compared to Formula E, they are in a much different stage of their career than what I am at the moment. So they're a lot happier to be friendlier with me and give me some potential advice, as they don't see me. I guess they don't see me as a threat at the moment. In F2, it's a little bit more that everyone is there for themselves, and of course, at F2, that kind of level, everyone's fighting for an F1 seat. It's the step below F1. So everyone's a lot more ruthless, whether it be on track or off track. For sure, I've spoken to some guys. Paul Aron, he and Zane Maloney, they also do the Formula E stuff. So I've seen them guys around Formula E paddock as well, and I've had some conversations with them about it. But yeah, for sure, my teammate as well. I knew Josh before this season, but not too good. But yeah, like I said, most of the Formula 2 paddock is there for themselves, which is completely understandable. Everyone's fighting for an F1 seat. So yeah, definitely less friends made in F2 than Formula E.
I have to say, Josh is just such a nice guy as well. I'm not surprised you said that. It's just radiates positivity and just seems to be delighted to be driving a car at all. And then, what podium it was. A really good moment. I'm going to go through a few less racy sort of questions, but Tio Torum wants to know, how often do you see people making the TBA, as in to be announced, jokes, and does it annoy you?
Not really. I do find it quite amusing, actually. When I think it was for this year, Beganovic was announced as the first driver, and everyone else was TBA, and every single comment under that post was, "I'm driving 29 cars next year," which was, you do see them kind of things and think it's a bit funny. So it doesn't annoy me at all, to be honest.
I'm glad we had something in feeder series which frustratingly went over a few people's heads with the Monaco thing. It said, does anybody know who got reverse grid pole position? It says TBA. When are they going to announce it? Which I thought was very good. But I'm glad to know it doesn't annoy you, because it's a really fun joke, I think. But yeah, glad that it doesn't annoy, and we'll have to get them sent to you if you have any cracking ones. This one's from Samako. They want to know, this is racing related, but not necessarily. What were your favorite racing games in your childhood?
Oh, that's a good question. I remember playing on the GameCube with my dad. We played F1 2002.
Wow.
F1 2002 on the GameCube was quite fun. That's probably one of my earliest memories from, motorsport. I was watching F1 at the time. I remember doing the old Hockenheim, where it was more or less an oval, because that was the best track that I could drive. Yeah, that one, and there was a Forza game that me and my dad used to drive on some. I think we used to drive on Charlotte in the Pagani in one of the old Forza games. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but that was a little bit later. I think that was on Xbox.
Yeah, it's very different from, I think it's F1 97 was my first game, and then a bit of Mario Kart, but it's slightly different. Well, how about yourself? I have to ask now I'm here.
I mean, for me, F1 2020 was my start. I got to play team.
2020, did you just say?
2020, yeah.
Wow.
recent, but
I mean, I feel old
it's
at the
about when
best
I
of
got
times,
into
Juan.
the
This
F1
is
games.
just killing me.
Jim, I'm sorry. Taylor, do you play any of the F1 games now?
I have F123. I did that a little bit at the end of last year when it came out. I was trying to get the world record in Melbourne, but I was not that quick yet. And I'm on iRacing at the moment, so yeah. I just saw the F124 game came out
Taylor,
as well.
It did just come out. But Taylor, I'm going to have to give you the chance to shine here because we're talking before recording about your iRacing credentials.
Yeah.
Tell everybody your iRacing level and tell everybody who you're beating in that iRacing, the iRating level that you have.
Yeah, I think iRacing's one of the main platforms for racing drivers. You see, Max, many F2 and F3 drivers, you casually get home from a race weekend, you hop on the sim on a Monday or a Tuesday, and you just see like Drugovich or Verstappen or any other F3 and F2 drivers just in your race. And I think for sure the cars that we drive are different, the tracks that we drive are different, but it gives you a bit more experience in other things. And also the other sim racers, the guys which are at the top level, they are really, really fast and they're really good. I think Max has said it on an interview before, but to see these guys on the sim, they've never driven a real car. Maybe some of them have, but the inputs that they give to the car and the things that they do are exactly the same as what we would do in a real car. So to see that they've had a different way of learning it, but we end up at the exact same result, is quite interesting, honestly. And the guys in their own discipline, they are really, really good. And to try to compete against them, first of all, they're very consistent, very, very consistent. And that's something that you can definitely take to real life. For sure, it's not the same cars, not the same circuits, but you can definitely learn different things. And I think it's definitely helped me in my career.
I didn't get the answer to the question, though. Who is the driver that you were beating in your iRating, Taylor? Because I was giving you a round of applause in my head when you told me.
Yeah, Max Verstappen.
Oh, it's great. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. I
love
was
also,
a big fan of it.
just by the way, that you said you want to get the Melbourne. You want to get the Melbourne world record, which just tells me the different mindset you have. I'm like, if I get a podium, it's a massive victory for me. That happens rarely. You're just like, no, I want to get the fastest lap.
Yeah.
Were you going to say, sorry, there's a slight delay. I don't mean to keep cutting you off. What were you going to say? Just Taylor.
No worries. Yeah, I try to avoid name dropping and number dropping because for sure if Max had more spare time, I think he would spend more time in the sim. He already spends quite a lot with the simulator at the tracks and whatever. But I think iRating's not directly related to how good you are because there's some guys with 8 or 9k which are just as quick. I think it just depends how many official races that you're doing. But yeah, it's not a bad stat to have, I guess.
No, it's not. 14 race weekends versus 24. That's the only reason Max isn't beating you. Let's give him a get out, shall we? But I think it's something that you should be very, very proud of. Let's go for the last 3 questions. I don't want to keep you all day because I know this is a really nice time before a very busy summer coming up. Tia wants to know, do you have any pets?
Yes, I have 2 labs. They are 1.5 years old. They're brothers. Yeah, they're great. They're great fun to be around.
Do we get to see them on your social media ever? Because I'll have to do so. I do love some dog photos.
I actually have pictures of them. I will post them on my Instagram later. I will put them on my story. Yeah.
Look at Feeder Series. We are impacting what drivers are doing on their social media. I love that. Thank you, Taylor. That'd be great. I'll have to get them screenshot and try and get them in the podcast as well. As a little shout out to the dogs, to the Barnard buddies. These 2 are tied together, and this is a long time question, but we also have a second part to it, which has really tickled me. RJ, Weather Radar Merchant, wants to know, what colour is your toothbrush?
It's black. Yeah. I have nothing else to comment on that.
I've never really heard of black toothbrushes, but we've had a few drivers say about black toothbrushes. But Crab, Bromine Lover, wants to know which toothpaste brand do you use. We're not endorsing anything on the podcast, just have to have these toothpaste questions asked.
Colgate. I don't know. I don't really. I just whatever Mum gets, I'm using it. So yeah.
I know that situation. I always forget which ones there are myself.
Yeah.
And let's go through these last few sort of things because I think it's probably time to let you go. So, was no Putra, unrelated to racing, but do you support any football teams?
I've had quite a lot of battles with Sam and Jake about this. They are very into golf and football, and I am very much solely motorsport driven. So I don't follow football. I don't support any football teams. And Sam and Jake are doing their best to try to get me into at least golf. And they've been trying very hard. So let's see if they're successful, I guess.
It's not going so well so far, it doesn't sound like.
Not really, no.
I like some of these questions about the Euros coming up, and I'm just like, yeah, I know. I'm the same as you. I used to watch a bit of football, but now if it's not on four wheels, it's not a sport in my eyes. So that's right. Tell them that'll be your answer.
Yeah.
And these final two questions, which I suspect are somewhat, there's something underneath them from who's asking. So I think you might have to be careful with what you say. Tommy KL wants to know who's your favorite simulator operator?
I guess. Wait, what does that mean?
I guess it's somebody involved in the simulator. I don't know, but Tommy KL is the person asking. I don't know if that means. I genuinely don't, Taylor. I'm not trying to get you in trouble, but Tommy KL maybe is a key to it. But who's your favorite simulator operator?
Okay, I'm going to say Thomas de Bock, and I'm not going to go any further because I don't know if that means what sim platform or... I'm guessing it's the guy from McLaren's asked that question, so I'm just going to say him.
Oh, that's a safe answer.
It
I might want to have something similar for AIX Racing, who has asked, who is your favourite colleague at AIX Racing? This has come from the Instagram account, and they say that there's only one correct answer here.
Yeah, I've been made aware of what I should answer to this question. It's Mark Overcamp. Yeah.
That has really tickled me. You've already been press trained on how to answer a question to give it the right answer. That's very, very funny. Thank you, Mark, for that question. Also, thank you, Mark, for helping arrange the podcast as well. I'm going to call it there because we could go through a little bit too long. I'm going to say thank you to Taylor. I'm going to say thank you to Juan as well for joining us. I've been so patient there, Juan, with all these questions. A lot, and we didn't get to probably about half of them. So thank you to the audience as well for giving so many. I do apologize if we ran out of time, because that is all the time we have for Taylor Barnard today. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. If you're watching on YouTube, please drop us a like on the video, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. That all really helps us out. And if you're listening, leaving a review on the podcast platform you're listening on, it's also greatly appreciated. Finally, check out feederseries.net for more Feeder Series insight and follow Feeder_series and FS Americas on X and Feeder Series Net on Instagram. You can find the links to all of those, plus where to find everyone in this episode in the YouTube description or the podcast show notes. Until next time, we have been the Feeder Series Podcast. Goodbye.